Gentlemen, please welcome the chair of the Churchill Club Board, Steve Bensington.
Good evening. I'm Steve Bankston, chair of the Churchill Club Board this year, and I run the Emerging Company Services Group at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Welcome. Over the course of the last 3 decades, Sun created technologies that define and often redefine the course of computing. This day marks the 29th anniversary of the founding of this remarkable company. How many people here are Sun alumni? Ed? So approximately all of you. Tonight, it's our privilege to present the Sun co-founder and former chairman and CEO, Scott McNealy, in conversation with How many people have their favorite McNealy story? And former Sun president and former Motorola chairman and CEO, Ed Zander. How many of you were here when Ed interviewed some guy named Larry? So, yeah, I know Scott was asking questions, but I don't see Larry to ask questions tonight. So we're hoping this will be even better. Thanks so much for being with us here tonight. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, NetSuite, for their support in making this program possible. Let's give NetSuite a round of applause. And a special nod of thanks to Shernaz Daver. Our program is being live streamed tonight on Fora.tv and will be available on demand after tonight. Greetings to our live streaming audience. For those of you who are less familiar with the Churchill Club, we are a nonprofit, member-supported, unusually lively business and technology forum with 7,000 members, most of whom appear to be here tonight. We present about 40 programs with industry thought leaders each year. Please join us and help celebrate our 25 years of igniting conversations that encourage innovation and economic vitality. Visit us on the web at churchillclub.org. Finally, you'll find Twitter codes in your printed program. Those weren't around when Sun got started. If you are tweeting tonight, please use #ChurchillClub. And now I invite Zach Nelson to the stage to introduce our moderator. Zach worked in marketing under Ed at Sun, and among other things was his partner in crime for getting the first version of the Solaris operating system out into the world. Zach is now CEO of NetSuite, where he has the pleasure of working with Ed once again as a member of his board. Please welcome Zach Nelson.
Thank you all very much, and it is indeed an honor to be here tonight. For a couple reasons. I kind of feel like I got into the hot tub time machine and came back here. Wasn't that set in the 1980s or something? And I'm seeing all these people from the 1980s. So Ed and Scott look exactly the same as they did in 1980. The rest of us, however, I don't know if I can say that about myself. And it is great to see all the former Sun folks. In fact, you know, when I was at Sun, I think the thing I was most fixated on was badge numbers. And I think Scott was number 3. I don't know how you got to be number 3 instead of 1. Anyway, you can probably tell that story. But I was trying to figure out who in the room actually has the lowest badge number that is still working for Sun. Oh, that's Oracle. Yeah, but Sun's still alive. Sun's still alive there, Oracle. And I think it may be Kim Miller. She was badge number 125. I don't know, is there anybody below 125 that is now working for Oracle? I think Kim's the winner. So Kim, congratulations. And I think the second reason I'm honored to be speaking is not because I consider Ed a friend and a mentor, but because I get to go on stage before Ed. Because it's not a lot of fun to go on stage after Ed, and Scott can handle it, but I don't think I could. It's also a very easy job introducing Ed, because it looks like everybody here worked at Sun, so he really does need no introduction. But I'm going to just share a few anecdotes and observations over my time with Ed, both at NetSuite and at Sun, and I'm sure you have many stories as well. But the ones I love most that Ed has told himself was in his early career at Raytheon, where he doesn't claim to be an Andy Bechtolsheim-like engineer. Where Andy, I can remember, I think I snuck into the Spark Station 1 launch, and all I can remember was Andy saying, "And it works." Apparently, when Ed would build stuff, he wouldn't say, "And it works." At least that's what Ed said. I'm just not speaking from the history books here. But I think we were all fortunate in the fact that Ed took that opportunity to move into marketing. And I think I came through the marketing ranks, a whole bunch of you came through the marketing ranks. And I think we have Ed to thank for the ultimate tool in a marketeer's bag is when they get that product that doesn't quite work. I think Ed was the guy that coined the phrase, "It's not a bug, it's a feature." And so we all can thank Ed for saving us on that front. On the other end of Ed's career, I think, I actually started my first job before I came to Sun, which was really my first job, but I did consulting with Motorola of all things. And I think that's probably what began Motorola's slide downhill, that Ed so expertly stopped when he went to Motorola. And I think that was one of the greatest turnarounds of all time in terms of fixing that organization, bringing the Razor to market, and making Motorola relevant again. So it was just a great capstone, I think, on a great career. But in between Motorola and Raytheon was this thing called Sun. And the 15 years that Ed spent there, I was lucky enough to spend 3 there, but I watched from afar for a long time. And there was 3 sort of things that I took from Ed as I built my career that I thought were important. When I joined, I had the easiest job in the world. I was Ed's speechwriter, so you can imagine I didn't have a lot to do. So I sat in rooms and watched Ed write speeches. And we always did these great launches. And so I got to sit at the foot of the master and see how all this stuff was done. And I think the first thing that I brought away from that was, Ed was always thinking big. And when I joined, I still have the T-shirt. We had just reached $1 billion at Sun. But we were competing with companies that were 10, 20, 100 times that size. And in these meetings, Anil Gadre would be there and John Liacono would be there. And Ed didn't just think we could beat these guys. He made us all believe we could. And I think that was a huge part of the success that we had in actually beating them in the marketplace. So thinking big, I think, was an important piece. The second piece, and I think if you go on the web and you type in Ed Zander and Google him, a word pops up, and that's creativity. And I think when I look back at Ed's career and when I was involved with Ed, it's not just creativity around marketing and launches, but I think the hardest thing, and now being a CEO, I know it's the hardest thing, is how do you get a second act for a company? And you look at the 15 years that Ed was at Sun, there was a first act, there was a second act, there was a third act, there was a fourth act, and that's all about business creativity. When I joined, the company was going through the transition from being a desktop system provider to a server provider, and that was a significant transformation and a very difficult transformation for the company to make. I think that was Act 2. Act 3, I think Scott woke up and decided he didn't have any Christmas presents for Eric Schmidt and Ed, so he split the company into the planets, for those of you that remember the planets. And he gave Eric SunTech, and he gave Ed SunSoft. And now, of course, SunSoft was a huge success, right? Solaris, Java, everyone knows it. But I was there in the early days, and when we started SunSoft, Solaris wasn't called Solaris, it was called the BWAS, the big wad of stuff. And so that was not an easy task to create something out of the BWAS, and now Solaris, of course, is the great operating system that it is. And finally, then the final transformation was Ed coming back, putting all that stuff together, putting the servers back together, putting the software back together, and really putting the .and .com, and not making Sun just important in the internet revolution, but making it the basis for what happened in the early 2000s in terms of the .com revolution. So creativity is a huge piece of it. And finally, I only have 2 minutes, so I only have about 2 more minutes to go. The thing, when I had the opportunity to do this, I called all of my old friends from Sun, and the one thing that I took away about Ed is everyone had a smile on their face when they worked for Ed. There was always a great story, and I hope I emulate that in my life, where everyone who came back had a story about being on the road with a customer, at a customer event, having a good time. And that's something that's incredible. So I hope for all of you, you can think big, you can be creative, and be happy and enjoy what you're doing. You may not be as successful as Ed Zander's been, but you might be as happy. So with that, I'll bring Ed up on stage.
Wow. Zach forgot to tell you that I'm on the compensation committee at NetSuite, and we have a meeting next week. Or as the Sun word was, that was a nice suck up. And wow, it is really just unbelievable to be here tonight, and I'm sure you want to get Scott up here in a few minutes and talk. I was going to ask you how many Sun employees are here. We already did that. How many, and Scott and I were just talking, how many were, it's just amazing, the exact director or above Sun people here. Man, we could really start a company tonight, huh? Either that, or you got confused and you thought today was Wednesday and it was free bagels, and which, by the way, we lost. Remember that? Or better yet, maybe you think this is a Sunrise Club and Roebuck's going to come out and sing a song somewhere. I couldn't find JR. I don't know where he is. He's probably doing some gig somewhere. Or finally, maybe you thought we're going to put this out on Facebook tonight, and tomorrow we're going to go march on Oracle and take it back. Yeah, well, I don't think so. I want to thank the Churchill Club, Steve and Karen, for asking me to do this. As I said, I did this about a year or so ago with Larry and had a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll have some tonight. I want to thank also Shanaz Davar, somewhere in this room, for making it work with the interview and all the materials and logistics and everything else. And just send the bill to Scott, by the way, Shanaz, not me. Several months ago, when they asked me to do this thing, we decided who we were going to do with. And I'm very careful about these things because I value the executives that I do talk to, so, like Larry. And I met with Shanaz, and I gave her a list of things that I was looking for an executive. I wanted someone with longevity in the business, experience, old. I want somebody with great success, but had challenges in the way and experienced adversity. I think it's really important. Someone who built the company with relevance and thought leadership. I want someone who was able to change the rules, take risk, had passion, had courage, and vision, as I like to say, soar around the corners. Someone who was opinionated and controversial, but charming. Had a tough one with the last one, charming. And someone that had so much money that they didn't have to be politically correct and could speak their mind. And finally, the easy one, was someone not as good looking as me. So naturally, we went after Bill Gates. And when he wasn't available tonight, so it was obvious we had Scott. In fact, as we said earlier, it's 29 years ago. It's amazing to the day that Bill, Andy, and Vinod, I call them the Fab Four, founded Sun. I first met Scott, I don't know if you remember this, you probably don't know. It was almost 20 years ago in 82, 83. And I was at Apollo Computer, that was a big competitor of Sun, and they were trying to hire me some marketing job. And Scott came out to the Sheraton Terra in Framingham, Massachusetts. But wait, you had that god-awful briefcase of yours that opened this way, that big tan thing, and I meet him, and he was 14 years old at the time, and he pulls out this board, and I go, I'm in a suit and tie, and he's whatever, and he says, Scott, he says, we're going to kick your ass. And I looked at him, I said, go away. I went up to my wife, and I said, I just met this little shit tonight, and I don't And oh, by the way, 5 years later, I was at Sun, and if I went there earlier, maybe I wouldn't be doing these interview gigs right now. But you talk about, in all seriousness, about longevity. It's hard-pressed to find any executive in tech that has done it for 25 years. That is just unheard of. You talk about success, 0 to almost $20 billion. At one time, Sun had a market cap approaching $200 billion. It was Fortune 150 or 120 or whatever it was at the time. Number one in workstations, number one in servers, number one in Unix. It was the internet company de facto standard. It took on and beat, during those great times, DEC, IBM, HP, and we challenged Microsoft. And you talk about relevance. I went back. There are 4 things we had, 4 quotes that were so, slogans for the company that are incredible when you think about today's world. Remember open systems for open minds? Remember the network is the computer, which to me defines everything that's going on today in the world. It is the cloud, it is everything we talk about. The dot and .com, which was internet, and write once, run anywhere. I mean, we could apply those 4 things to just about everything we see today in applications and software and systems and everything else. We created brands that, to me, I don't think any other company, IBM or HP, Java and Solaris, we introduced RISC and Spark. While we didn't capitalize, we introduced things called thin clients, which today you're all using right at your tables today. Virtualization, the cloud, I was talking to Papadopoulos. Remember the big friggin' webtone switch, which we never executed on, but it was fun? Talked open source, low-cost workstations, 5K, 10K, broke all the barriers, network servers, and filed over 14,000 patents. And you talk about passion, courage, and leadership. I can only do that with the Scottisms. Remember kick butt and have fun? And we did. Remember all the wood behind one arrowhead? To ask permission is to seek denial. The best decision is the right decision. The next best is the wrong decision. And the worst is no decision. And how about the 100 or so, or maybe more, ex-Sun employees that went on to become CEOs and went on to lead venture capital and consulting firms? Eric over at, what's that company, Google? And Carol at Yahoo, and Bill Coleman at BEA, and Zach here at NetSuite, and myself at Motorola, and I'm sure a lot more in this room. It's really a tribute to leadership qualities that Scott gave us. And you talk about opinionated, controversial. Remember these, the evil empire? Big hat, no cattle. Balmer and Butthead. One of my favorites when Compaq and HP, like a slow motion collision between 2 garbage trucks. And I thought about Nokia and Microsoft the other day, and I said, here we go again. And the one that we'll talk about up here tonight, you have zero privacy, get over it, which is always interesting. And one of my favorites of all time is Windows a hairball. And by the way, I just got rid of Windows 7. It is a hairball even today, and so true. And finally, he does have some money, and he's not good looking as me, so he was the obvious choice. So without further ado, and by the way, tonight we did not rehearse. He did not see any questions. You're going to get a chance to ask some questions. This is totally off the cuff. Let me introduce Scott. Before I do, as we used to introduce Scott in the old days, what better way to introduce him with a video? So let's roll the video, and then we'll get him on here.
Keep it stoking. Network. Thanks, Eddie.
That's good.
I'm surprised the recording media still works on that old thing.
Oh, boy, that was fun, huh? Well, good to see you. You look good.
Hanging in there?
Yeah, hanging in there. That was pretty
Hi,
nice.
everybody.
I want to make sure also we say hello to Scott's lovely significant other, wife, Susan, and his mother, Marm, there. My wife, Mona, and my son also are here tonight, so this is kind of a nice thing to do. So I got to be real nice now because Susan's going to look at me, and I got to make sure I ask nice questions. Anyway, look, the first question that everybody here wants to know, and real serious in the press and everybody else, and when I asked what is the one question they want to ask you, this was it. You've been out of Sun for, I don't know, about a year or whatever it's been, and
I lasted 2 days.
yeah, 2 days. The real serious question is, have you used PowerPoint? Come on.
No, actually, my wife is my CIO and Chief Technical Officer now. She handles all the administration in the house, and she's into Apple and Mac, and so she handles all that.
So you never took a look. You never took a peek at Excel or
I
Word.
use Open Office on the Mac, or what's it called? It's Open something on the Mac. But.
Let's get serious. So, I think one of the questions, do you miss Sun? And being CEO and winning and kicking butt was a tough decision. How do you reflect on that?
Yeah, it was actually a harder decision to step down as CEO, because at that point I knew I wasn't in charge. I wasn't going to be my board. Wasn't going to be my strategic decisions. And Jonathan, I really, really wanted to step back because I had 4 boys. The youngest was 2 or 3 at the time, and the oldest was about 9. And I wanted to spend time with them. And I was on the road, and I grew up with a dad who was never around, and I didn't want to do that to my children. So I had to step down because I had such a sense of duty that I didn't know how to not work 90 hours a week. I think most of you who know me and saw me and kind of followed me around a little bit.
Is it hard not being part of Sun right now, or seeing the logo up on the building?
I wish it had turned out a little differently, sure. And I wish I had set it up on a better trajectory when I stepped down. I wish, but you know what? We had a great run. And our technology is going to be shipping, and the work we did is going to be shipping inside of the cloud forever. I mean, 50, 100 years from now, our technology will still be there, and what we did.
Do you ever reflect, 30 years, or last 30 years, you've had incredible success in both personal and professional. Do you ever step back and pinch yourself and say, wow?
I remember driving down 237, and Convergent Technologies had just hit 100 million. And they had a billboard up there that said 100 million. Thanks $100 million or something to all the employees. And I thought, look at all those zeros. And I think at the time, we had our first volume shipment, which was 3 workstations. And so I also remember when we started, I said to Vinod, all I want is to make $2 million. I wanted to clear that because I wanted $500,000 to buy a house. I wanted, and get a park bench. Although Fannie Mae and Barney Frank are fixing that problem for all of us. And I wanted $1 million to live off of. I was going to earn 10% and live on $100,000 a year for the rest of my life. And the other $500,000 I was going to go crazy with. And
I think you did. I remember those days. But when did you know? I like to ask this question. I think I asked it of Larry. Is there any time when you knew you would be big? What was the defining moment? If you look back in the 80s and 90s, was there something that happened that you said, wow, we've got something here that's going to be bigger than ever imagined?
No, it just kept building. It just kept happening. And I don't know. The computer vision deal was obviously the big one that we beat a little company.
Yeah, Apollo.
Apollo, yeah. So that was probably the one where we went from we're dead. I thought we were toast to, all right, we're going to make it, and we're going to rock and roll. So, and really the one that I think really launched us was Java.
Yeah.
Java and Spark. Those 2 things really changed the complexion.
So one of the things I was going to ask you too, and I don't think I ever asked you, when you were sitting that time in Washington testifying, and it was just you and Gates, how did you feel? I mean, like, did you ever think back on that thing and go like, why did I do that? Or I'm glad I did it, or what?
It was surreal, sitting there and watching Strom Thurmond. I can say this now, I'm not a CEO. But they propped this guy up there, and this is one of the guys making decisions. And he couldn't even read his cue cards, and its font was about this big. And I thought, why am I talking to this guy? And most of the guys up there were asking questions that were just so far off the mark, and we're so excited to have a camera on them. And then you just sit and listen to everybody and their positions, and it made me wonder how democracies work sometimes, given the misinformation and the inability to even comprehend what was going on. But
it was an amazing amount of press we got, though.
It was.
In terms
It was.
of Sun.
You know, one of the things that I've often tried to explain to Bill Gates and everybody else out there, it was all theater.
Yeah.
We didn't have. I mean, what do you think? You spent $40,000 in advertising your
we had
entire
no money,
career
right,
there?
Johnny? Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to go do things that were just to be noisy and to be entertaining and to be heard. And
So let me talk about Sun, and I know when questions come in, and we got to certainly ask them. I mean, most of us in this room, and I just looked around, the talent here is just unbelievable.
I'm not sure I can answer any questions for this group. They were there.
Yeah, but in your mind, reflecting back, I think every one of us would say we were better than HP or IBM or Dell. What do you think happened? I mean, in terms of where Sun ended up with Oracle, in your mind, or is there a rational explanation, or you can put it in perspective, or it's just what it is, what it is?
I don't know. I'd like, in an immodest moment, think that maybe Larry was right. He said, a long time ago, you should have just hired a CEO or a COO who didn't want to be CEO, and gotten an operating person who had absolutely no designs on my job, which would have allowed me to dial up and down my time commitment, and so I could still maintain the culture and the strategy and the focus and all the wood behind one arrowhead and all the rest of it. But I don't think that ever would have happened. I just think that it's a tough business. Capitalism, operating correctly, is not supposed to allow somebody to run away or catch the bunny in the dog race. It's supposed to be driving every company to basically the cost of capital in terms of profits, and it's fundamentally supposed to create a massive amount of turnover. So I don't look at that as anything other than the Lion King circle.
Well, why Oracle? I think it was good. I asked Larry.
Oh, why Oracle during
I suppose they're closed proprietary, perhaps, and.
Well, I don't know when the statute of limitations are, or when I can say what was going on, but I'll tell you what, the IBM answer was not. I mean, that deal was. I know too much, I'll go meet with any of you over a beer, and I'll tell you the truth. But. Some things are just better left not talked about.
Okay.
The real bottom line answer was that the IBM deal was an option on Sun. And the best thing that could have happened for IBM was to announce that maybe we're going to buy Sun, and then a year later back off after we had been paralyzed and would have absolutely destroyed. Oracle came in 2 weeks and made a firm, committed, better in every way, shape, or form offer than IBM. And with IBM, every job at Sun would have been redundant with somebody at IBM. At least at Oracle, they didn't have a lot of chip designers. They didn't have a lot of operating system people.
You probably can't comment, but how do you think things are going over there?
You know what? Larry hasn't called. I haven't been sitting in on. They got. It was very clear, as I tell everybody, they already had a chairman who has a way bigger boat than me, and so he.
I think go focus on, the network is the computer. I mean, I remember joining, and a lot of people didn't even understand. How did it happen? How did it get created? When did it happen? And do you think we were, well, we weren't, but we maybe 10 years ahead of our time, because that is it today,
if you think about it, we actually were, the cloud computing started with TCP/IP. I mean, that was the first, most important connection that had to be made, and we were the first company to put TCP IP on every computer we ever shipped. Without day one, the first Berkeley Sun OS workstation was TCP IP. The next big step was NFS. And without NFS, you couldn't have started to contemplate and architect around building. And then big things like Solaris and all of the features and the multi-threading, multitasking features that we put into that and the virtualization features that we put into that are all part of cloud computing today. And then Java was another huge step.
When was the network, is the computer, was that 85?
It was in the mid-80s, sometime like that. Yeah. But we had already, I mean, I remember when Andy drew the first chart, he drew a file system, or a file server. And of course, I didn't know what a disk drive was. I said, what's a file server? But Andy was already thinking about that, and his whole concept was everything had to be networked.
Microsoft, and you know, people say the bashing. Was it worth it in your mind?
You know, we had to do something to be heard and to be understood, and you know, I don't want to go over past words. They clearly won. They're still around. Yeah. You know, if I dropped out of school a little earlier, maybe I could have.
I think
You know, you look at Zuckerberg, Gates. I was at school at Balmer. He dropped out a year early at business school. Jobs. Did Ellison even ever go?
Well, that's the big quote for tonight. Drop out of college. You know, so yeah, okay. You know, questions you always get asked. I don't know. You know,
my sons are watching. Yeah. Oh no.
You ever think back, best decision at Sun?
Best decision at Sun was, well, certainly getting Bill Joy on board was really key. Yeah. And I remember as soon as we got him on board, John Gage and I were kind of the sales department, and we'd get calls from Europe. Literally the phone call, we were in the, sales was a table back in the manufacturing area, and I got this call from Europe. I was so-and-so from some university in Stuttgart. Is Bill Joy with your company? Yeah, he's one of the founders. Well, what do you sell? And I said, $10,000 workstations. He says, I'll take 3. That's how easy things started to get with Bill Joy.
What about the other side, Mulligan? Which decision you'd like to have back?
Probably, no question, they're both kind of the same. Is when we did the 386i, we made a 99%
Is Barry James here? Where are you?
Yeah, we made a 99.99% compatible PC that didn't run Windows, which is the Osborne effect. But then actually the bigger, we survived that one, no problem. The bigger mistake we made was, and it was okay that we closed Sun OS with the deal with AT&T and made it non-proprietary, but the problem we made was that we didn't metal wrap Solaris x86. We canceled it about 12 times in the press. And we thought, my big mistake was I thought if we did software only, that people would adopt it thinking, but what I didn't realize was they were terrified of us as a hardware supplier, so they weren't going to do our OS. If we had just grabbed the Intel Pentium chip and done a one-way and two-way pizza box with Solaris on it, Linux never would have happened. And we would have hit that whole next wave that was post-2000 that all went, and we would have had all the little startups. And Google today would be running on Solaris if we hadn't kind of messed that one up and gotten the whole world. So that's the one big mulligan.
You know, you think about all the executives I talked about and the CEOs, leaders, and we know the other companies, HP and IBM and even Cisco, and you don't see the, why do you think, you know, we got all, you know, Sun, the culture, the DNA, why did they give birth to all of these executives?
If I had to pick one word, and it really took us 25 years to actually boil it down. We used open and this and the one word that Sun used, and I think why we were such a community and such a strong team was the word share. And at every step along the way, we shared. We had huge stock option programs until the government decided that was stupid. We shared our technology, our interfaces. We shared with our resellers. We shared with the ISVs. And was probably the downfall. We probably shared a little too much. certainly in the last 5 years, zero.
And what made most of us, a lot of these, people in this room go on to be, there's something in the DNA that you cultivated.
By sharing, you ended up being very social.
Yeah.
And by being very social, you made a lot of friends, a lot of partners, and people wanted to be with you and around you, and people enjoyed that.
I also think some of the things, my own feeling is we learned how to take risks, we learned courage, passion, vision, and think big. I really do. I think, at least myself. So I think that's the thing you kind of, if you worked at Sun, you were, every day you were going to battle. Every day you're going to go to win. Every day there was only one.
I give Benoit a lot of credit. When we started Sun, we kind of made a pact and kind of became blood brothers. And we said, if we're going to flame out, we're going to do a belly flop that empties the pool out. And so at that point, every time we had a chance to go do something incremental or, empty the pool out, we went to empty the pool out. We did a few times, but
So if I look at, Wikipedia or whatever's around 30 years from now, what are they going to say about Sun? What do you think?
I don't know. One of the bigger trends that I think we started was this open source trend, and I don't think it's over yet, even though we lost probably the biggest proponent of open source, because I haven't noticed Larry pushing that concept of sharing. Susan and I got to ride on his boat once.
Is it?
We had some fun on his airplane once. He wasn't on the plane, but I won't go there. I'm going to have to get a new ride.
All right. Well, I guess I'll move on. In fact, you think, you got the workforce here. You're still young. You think Larry would give it back to you? And how many people would join the march right now? Let me focus on something else that I don't think you and I have really ever discussed publicly, and that was Apple. And I don't
Are we at the statute of limitations on that one?
Yeah, we are. I don't know if you will know, but it was late 95 and early 96, and I don't know how I just remember being part of it, but we were literally hours away from buying Apple, and for about, was it $5, $6 a share at that time?
Yeah.
And honest to gosh, I was at actually an analyst meeting in San Diego, ready to announce on a Tuesday morning that we were going to buy Apple. I don't know what the hell we were going to do with it, but we were going to buy it. And we didn't get it, or
Who was the CEO? Was it Spindler?
No, remember they had no CEO at the time because they kept firing them all, and then Steve wasn't there, and it was, we had some, let's not get into it too much, but why did you kind of back away, or why didn't you?
We wanted to do it, and there was an investment banker on the Apple side who was an absolute disaster. And he basically blocked it and basically put so many terms into the deal that we couldn't afford to go do it. So.
Just think that if that night was different, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe no iPods and iPads.
There wouldn't be iPods, there wouldn't be iPads, there wouldn't be a 709. I'd have screwed that up. Yeah. So.
But it's an incredible turn of events. As going through this pitch, I went back through all my stuff, and there's the Apple thing, and I don't think we ever really...
We got really close once to really Compact, almost did that one.
And but Apple was really close.
Instead, we did, what was Steve DeWitt's deal? We did...
Cobalt.
Oof.
Hey, I did that one.
Oh, you did?
You did storage. Wait a second, don't start with me. You did Storage Tech, which was a hell of a lot worse than Cobalt. All right, let's talk about today. So, obviously, everybody's talking about the cloud and the software as a service model. You think, is that it? Are they right on? What's your take on today's computing environment?
Yeah, it's still got to be a utility. It's still, everybody building their own Frankenstein 1.0 and trying to get to 2.0. It just isn't going to happen. And I'm funding and founding and chairing a stealth startup right now. And the last thing we're going to do is buy a computer or assemble a computer. We're just going to go do the Amazon Web Services cloud.
Services.
Absolutely.
What about social networking? I don't know.
Are you on Facebook?
I'm going to ask you that a little later, but no, the answer is no. But Facebook, Twitter, the startups.
Do you tweet?
I'm asking the questions.
Some things never change.
So, what is your take? This is, I'll be honest with you, it's amazing to me, and it's saying the political, social, and economic impact of what's happening today on the network. I mean, do you buy into it all, or what's your take on, besides the market cap of these companies and the incredible growth of these companies, whether that's rational or not, or whether we're headed for another bust now, because you and I have seen a number of them over the past 10, 20 years. I mean, is it right? Do you get it? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm still trying to understand exactly what LinkedIn or all these other things do for you that primitive old email doesn't do. And that's, I don't know, I'm old, so I use email. And it's interesting, the latest new Facebook innovation was email. Yep. Right? I mean, wasn't that what they, and texting looks to me to be hard email. Oh, I ran out of space. Forwarding texts are really hard, and cut and pasting and, printing them out. So I don't know.
Really? But don't you think, you gotta, I don't know, you read 500 million people on Facebook, and I don't know how many people are really on it. You look at what happened in the Middle East, look what happened even in Wisconsin. The fact that that young people don't have to take their news from CNN, or the advertising model changes, or the whole social and political impact of these things. I mean, I'm not saying it's good or bad.
I'm not saying, to answer your question, I mean, I think social networking is just another way of saying cloud computing again. And, the cloud computing is virtualizing and communitizing and sharing and all. I mean, to be honest, there's a guy who passed away recently who I admired, and that was Ken Olsen. Yep. He was one of the really great early on entrepreneurs.
Those of you who don't know, he was the founder of Digital Equipment Corporation, and probably as much of a thought leader as anybody that you and I have.
Yeah, and if you noticed when DEC came out and launched, they called themselves distributed computing, which was the first phrase for cloud computing. Now they had some other rather interesting words like open VMS, which I called the one-word lie. But I remember him walking down the hall, I'll never forget this, in a Boston hotel, and he's walking down the aisle, going past rooms, and he puts his arm around me and he says, "Scott, you really ought to merge with us and just give up on that Solaris thing and go VMS. It's a far better product." So anyhow, I miss him. He was a great guy.
So if there's an evil empire today, who is it? Is it Google? Is it Facebook? Is it still Microsoft?
I think it's, and I don't mean it as the evil empire, but I think the one threat to all technology companies is the public sector taking over the private sector. And so I don't look at it as any individual company. I just look at us as the percentage of the GDP wrapped up in the public sector continues to accelerate at a, right. And that is going to be what drives out innovation and really causes more hardship. That is opportunity costs that we never really understood. It's sort of like, when the wall came down and the curtain came down and we brought some Russian engineers. Remember we started up all the Russian engineering, and we brought a Russian couple over, and they got off the plane and walked into a grocery store and saw all this food having come in from Russia, and the wife just started crying. She couldn't believe there was this much food on the shelves in the world. And the problem is, when you're there, you don't know what you're missing. And by having the public sector dominate the innovation and the productivity and the goods and services that are driven out of the private sector, when they dominate, you don't know what you're missing, and we'll never know what's not being innovated. And I don't think it's Google or Microsoft or anything else that's stifling all of that right now. It's massive deficits. It's misallocation of investor dollars and capital, and a very stifling.
So I was going to ask you about American competitiveness. I mean, that was the next
That's the
question.
big deal right there.
So your take on U.S. today?
When the percentage of the public sector has reached basically World War II levels, and that's not what's going on out there right now. You can't blame it on, some unmanned aerial vehicles in Afghanistan is driving the budget deficit. You just can't do that anymore. It's stimulus is just spending more than you have.
So if you were invited and I wasn't either to the Obama dinner, what would you have said or asked or told our
Let
president?
me up. That's what I love to say. I'm
would
not
you-
going to harm anybody.
What would you have, if asked, what would you have said?
I would have said you have to cap the federal budget, non-defense, at some number, like 12% of the rolling average of the last 3 years GDP, and tell Congress you get to spend it however you want, and you decide how you want to spend it. And then we do consumption taxes to pay for the 12% of GDP. And we eliminate income taxes, corporate taxes, and all of those other things. That brings everybody into the economy, gives everybody a chance, it drives personal responsibility, it eliminates, I mean, have you all looked at your income tax forms lately? Imagine eliminating all that and we go to a strict consumption tax kind of environment, and I would tax energy that tends to be polluting energy and not tax, say, nuclear energy or stuff like that, or water, hydroelectricity, that sort of thing. So it'd be simple. We'd have the productivity we would unleash in this country with those low cost of capital and driving personal responsibility and getting the government out of insurance. Let's bring Jack Welch in.
Yeah, you think our president, I mean, I'm just noticing, in the past, maybe since November election, that they may be listening, maybe trying to move a little bit towards some of these, no? Okay, yeah. that was years ago. We don't do that anymore.
What do you do, Eddie?
I don't know anything. I'm old. I go to bed early. Who do you like in politics? Anybody?
I am a big fan of Mitt Romney.
Okay.
He's a businessman. He's a capitalist. He's been there. He understands where jobs, where taxes come from. I think Mike Cassidy's in the room here from the Mercury News.
Oh no, the press is here.
And he just launched an article today about naming of the Norm Mineta Airport, whether we should add Silicon Valley. And I said, we should rename this thing after what I call national economic heroes, the taxpayers who paid for it, rather than the politicians who taxed us to go pay for it. And the Larry Ellison Airport, International Airport, or the Gordon Moore International Airport, I think makes far more sense than, no offense, Norm, but your taxes might have paid for a couple of stripes on the road out front, but Larry might have gotten a whole wing over there. And then we give him grief because he wants to land his quiet airplane after dark because he was out working. I don't.
So, something close to you.
Isn't it great not to be CEO? Now, I want to share with you an important aspect of why I couldn't say all that I wanted to say, and some of you got the chance to hear some of me unplugged, is when 26% of the GDP is with the federal government. If I were to go say, the government ought to eliminate public sector employees, unions, because public sector unions are inherently corrupt, because they're taking dues from automatic and then using that to fund their bosses, the elected officials who are paying their salaries to get elected, and you have this whole unholy alliance that is absolutely corrupt. And by the way, if the DMV doesn't do a good job for you, do you have another company to go to get, it is inherently, and by the way, do you think now that we're going to organize the TSA workers, are they working in hazardous working conditions? Would you please take your belt off? I guess that's hazardous. The old, tap away thing that they do and stuff. Maybe, but do they really need to be unionized? Are they work? I mean, are we? It's fascinating to me what's going on.
So let's talk about something close to you, Detroit.
If I said all of that stuff when we were CEO
you'd be dead.
of Sun, how do you think Bill Vass, as president of Sun Fed, would feel? And by the way, the government has an enormous amount of leverage and power against anybody. Look at what they're doing in Wisconsin. The elected official, the governor, who was elected of the people, by the people, for the people, is fighting the government employees. Isn't that fascinating? that says that there's a different balance of power, and it's kind of nice not to be CEO anymore, because I can actually share with you my deepest, most inner, and I don't have to worry about the shareholders at Sun Microsystems getting hammered.
Detroit, saving GM, close to your heart. You grew up in Detroit. You know, GM just reported the first profitable year. I mean, right thing to do?
I think it was criminal that they screwed the bondholders and gave more of the union. It was just crooked. It was crooked.
But was it the right thing in terms of a bailout at all?
No, lots of companies go into bankruptcy and come back out stronger, but the bankruptcy courts handle it, not the government, because the government will not allocate fairly. I trust the bankruptcy court to follow the letter of the law and give the bondholders and other stakeholders in the company instead of giving it to the unions. It was a flat political money grab that's. I'm probably going to buy Fords from here on out.
Yeah, really?
I got a Mustang. It goes fast.
I've been just reading, catching up about some of the quotes you've had on Silicon Valley. Not a place for innovation, not a place to start a company. Tell me, because I'm looking at...
Silicon Valley is not the problem. It's Washington, D.C. and Sacramento. The Valley's great. But there's some... You ever tried to build a house here and get a permit? I put a little roof over a little sunken structure. It was $27,000 for the permit fee, just to put a simple little roof that was 8 feet high, 8 feet above floor. I mean,
but don't you think? I mean, I was just in San Francisco today, and the real estate market is going booming because new companies. You look at Facebook and you look at Twitter. You look at Salesforce. No. Aren't we seeing a whole new round of innovation in Silicon Valley right now, and new startups?
I suppose, but the unemployment rate in California is still the #1 indicator, I think. And if we're not at 3.5% to 4.5% unemployment, I think we are way beyond structural unemployment, and we're not there. And in fact, California has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, and I think the United States has a disastrous unemployment rate. And we're going to have a whole group of college graduates who aren't finding jobs and who are going to go 3 or 4 years without jobs, and you watch, their lifelong earnings are going to be significantly impacted because they're going to be part of this missing generation that just wasn't able to come out in those first 3 or 4 years. I think the opportunity cost of going a full year without being fully employed that's just, we have to fix that. And the government has proven that stimulus doesn't do it.
Why don't you run for office?
There's not enough Kevlar in the world to keep me alive.
What? Let me shift a more...
Nobody would vote for me. Everybody would agree with some part of what I said.
Would you vote for him? I'd vote for him. It'd be fun to have up there.
I offend everybody eventually.
What about... let me get on the personal note.
I'm okay with that.
Today, something dear to you, and I know Susan is the cricky and education, and it's on the tables. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about it and your passion around education?
We invented open source. I give Bill Joy credit for, the Berkeley OS was the first major open source project using open source licensing, the BSD licensing model, and we took it and grabbed it, and we did it with NFS, and we grabbed open source TCP/IP. We were the company that really drove, now I think Red Hat did a little better job of monetizing in some areas and that sort of thing with Linux, but we really made a lot of money doing open and sharing. And Kim Jones, who's over there, raise your hand, Kim, she was running, we were somewhere in Europe and she was running our education group, and I was talking about my third grader at the time, Maverick, and he asked me, Dad, can we do I'm going to do a science project on electricity. Can you teach me about electricity? So I said, watch me. I'm going to get on the search engine. I'm going to go all around. I'll find you a self-paced, on-demand, animated class to learn about electricity. It was an hour and a half. I couldn't find anything. Finally, we ended up on a welding site that had a nice little animated, flashlight thing, electrons, and we'd take chapter 1, pass the test, high five, and we got to chapter 5, and it turned into welding. And I thought, how silly is this? We're open sourcing word processors, spreadsheets, operating systems. but where's the K through 12 curriculum? So we started to do some research, Kim and I, and we spend up to $15 billion a year, every year, annually, once a year, on K through 12 educational materials. Textbooks are $130. $130 for a third grade math textbook. 10 plus 10 was, is, and will be 20 for a long time. And nothing's really changed since Newton got hit on the head by the apple. We gratuitously revise it every 4 years, and it's a backbreaker. Literally, my kid has a roller bag that I can't lift into the Denali, and then I got a backpack, and he's got his computer with him. And why can't he just take a little iPad? And why can't it be all online, self-paced, on-demand, free, open source, real-time scoring? And so Kim and I started the Global Education Learning Community, and it started to become a big idea. It took off. We spun it out of Sun, mainly because Jonathan thought that should be separate, and it probably should have been, and it was bigger. So we renamed it Curriki, as in curriculum and wiki, and we now have 45,000 learning assets. We have 150,000 plus teachers, and we have millions of page views, and the thing's grown at 70% per year, all running with about 4 or 5 people. Andy Bechtelsheim was a big early supporter. Obviously, I was. Gordon Moore was a big supporter. AT&T hosted in their data centers for us for free, all the rest of it. But we really need to go out and raise, and one of the things I do, and the hardest job in the world is begging for money. We wanted to leave it as a .org because we wanted to keep the content free, and we wanted so anybody who'd like to donate $5 or more, raise your hand, and we'll run around and give you a little card to help you fill
I think
in
it's
a
on the
donation.
table. I think we have
If
on
you have
the
them
table.
if they're on the table, that would be great.
What do you see the roadblocks? Any, or is it just now money?
The roadblocks are we have trickle-up poverty going on, and the investor class, who has been very charitable here in America, is overbooked, overscheduled, and our timing was just late. If we had started this thing in 1990 and ridden the bubble up, we would have gotten the $50 million. For $50 million, we can create a complete curriculum that would basically obsolete most of the $15 billion that we spend every year on curriculum.
What's the website, in case they don't?
CURRIKI.org.
I invite you all to go there or
Go
take the
spend
stuff
some
from
money.
Tim. I think it's great.
Go for it.
In terms of startups and areas of technology, I know you're doing a little investing, a little consulting, advising, and you got some good things you want to share with us. So
What I learned why Open Office shipped in such high volume. It was free, so I offered to consult for free because I didn't want to have a sense of duty. And it's amazing. The interest in free consulting is very high. So there's a lot of you out there who've even sent me emails and asked me to come help, and I can't even get to you. And today it's fun. I tell everybody I'll consult for free. I won't ever ask for compensation. I won't be an employee. I won't take a title. I'll be special advisor to the chairman, and I'll help you if I can and if I'm having fun and if I can get around to it. And the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I just had a little software company that's open source. Some ex-Sun people who took some of the Sun open source, and they're growing their business, growing like crazy. And the guy just called up, and I've been helping him for almost a year now. And he said, "I want to give you a 0.5% of the company." I said, "Cool." And that was really fun.
So you will take some money.
People are doing that when Green Plum,
Yeah.
when Bill Cook got bought by EMC, and I'm now working for EMC. And Bill Cook and a couple of his founders made very nice donations to Curriki that were wonderful.
Awesome.
And much appreciated. So it's a blast. I'm actually making money, not even asking for it. So
You're gonna run a company someday again?
I don't know that I'll ever do the CEO thing. I'm loving chairman. I'm chairman of 2 new startups. One is a stealth internet deal that I've founded, and I'm chairing. And then there's Flogton, which is my fun one.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm actually more than the chairman. I'm commissioner. So I've never been commissioner.
Tell the folks about your Flogton and golf.
So Flogton, actually, some buddies came to me and said, golf's in trouble, and they showed me the stats. Golf rounds are going down, courses are closing, and people are not playing it. The younger generation just doesn't want to have to put on khakis and put their phone away for 6 hours. They start shaking. It's not, where to go? And so it became clear that the game is getting too hard, and the USGA is making the rules to slow down Tiger and Ernie and all these guys, right? They're not, and then how many corporate events have you all been on where either you or somebody in the group couldn't get the ball airborne, and after about 12 strokes this is supposed to be fun, they're breaking clubs, or they're sweating and they're embarrassed and all the rest of it. And we said, why can't we make the game why can't we create another game? It's the only playing field that only has one set of rules on it. A soccer football field has Australian rules, soccer, American football, hurling, it has everything on it. You look at a ski slope, they have ski jumping, they have slalom, they have downhill, they have snowboarding, and snowboarding saved the ski slope operators. So we said, let's go create some. So we created a name, a placeholder named Flogton that's not golf backwards. It was not taken on the website, domain registry. So
Do you think I could score in this game?
You'll keep score. There'll be
Wow,
separate
this
rules,
is good
and
for
you'll
me.
actually enjoy it. You'll be able to break 90 legally. Legally.
Yeah. A question, if any one of your four sons came up to you and said, I want to be a CEO, what advice do you have for them?
No, not drop out. I think it's important for them to play team sports, so they're all playing hockey. I think it's important for them to play an individual sport where they can't blame anybody, so they all play golf. So they're learning personal responsibility, and I think hockey is the ultimate team sport, because you don't have time to call a huddle, you don't have time to call the next pitch, you don't have time like in a soccer game where you have 10 seconds before a guy catches up to you or whatever, and the puck is not round, and it takes an enormous amount of courage to play hockey. And let me tell you, you go into the corner with my 15-year-old right now, and you got a lot of courage, because you're probably not going to walk away from the rink. I mean, these guys are tough, and all four of my boys are playing both sports, and I think both of them are going to set them up with the right kind of leadership skills. Plus, we have the Tiger Mom over here, who's my wife, who basically demands straight A's. And I think that demanding of excellence and that self-esteem comes from getting the job done, not being told you're a good kid, I think is the training that these kids all need to be leaders. And I'll tell you what, I'd vote for any one of my four boys to be president of the United States right now over most of the candidates I've had a chance to vote for over the last 10 years.
Good sign.
I'm a proud dad with that.
Yeah. What advice would you give? I know we do have a lot of Sun people here, but we've got some young people here that are either founders or CEOs or have a dream or an idea. You were there once in your 20s. What advice do you have for them?
Well, first of all, if everybody thinks your idea is a good idea, it isn't. Because if everybody thinks it's a good idea, they're already doing it. If they're already doing it, there's no differentiation. If there's no differentiation, you have no pricing power. No pricing power, you're not going to make money. No money, you're going out of business. So it's got to be controversial. That's okay. Just understand that, most good ideas. Now the problem is you got to be controversial and correct. The correct part is, a little tougher. But the second thing I tell young people is do it now. Don't do it after you have kids, because it's a 90-hour-a-week maneuver, and I don't think my wife would have appreciated me back in the early days. You got to outwork people.
Yep.
So those are the two big messages: is be okay with the fact that it's different, but then you'd better just outwork everybody.
The venture capital community today in the Valley and around the country, you think it's still a good resource, or?
I have no problem with the venture community. I have no problem with the legal community, all the rest of it. The issue I have is we just need a larger private sector.
Okay, a few questions. We're going to get to the audience. Facebook account?
No.
Your family?
No.
You tweet? Twitter?
No.
Use Netflix?
Susan does.
Oh, good. Okay.
I use DirecTV.
What phone you carrying?
I got a BlackBerry.
Okay. iPod?
iPod, no, mine broke, and so I don't have one.
iPad?
I have an iPad, and I
Okay,
use
good.
that for my iPod.
What
on the
computer do
airplane.
you have?
It's a Mac.
Okay. And who has been the largest influence in your life besides perhaps Susan, mom, and the family?
I don't know. I don't really know. I've never had, I moved around so much and had so many different jobs, and then probably you.
Yeah, thanks.
How'd I do? Did I get that one right? I got one right.
You're still pissed off about Cobalt. And any person you'd like to meet that you haven't?
Oh, Yeah, Ronald Reagan.
Oh, okay, good. Good answer. A lot of people today would.
He's my hero. He got it right, and he was much more gentle than I was, but he'd still fire the FAA air traffic controllers when they struck. So he's a gentle guy who was tough. And Gaddafi didn't have, he kind of was really good for a long time after he shared with him his
That's
personal, I mean, he's just a tough guy, but really gentle and really fair and really honest. And he understood what America was all about, and he understood personal responsibility.
Good
so
choice.
we could use another guy like
Want to
that.
finish up with some one-word answers? Want to try it?
I'll try.
Try it. Ready? Microsoft.
A great and successful long-term company that is critical to running the world today. And I think they're facing a sufficient amount of competition that you'll see them continue to innovate.
One-word answer.
Oh, I get one word?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were giving me one word.
Facebook.
Zuck.
That's a good one. HP.
That was with a Z.
I know. HP. All right. Got it. Democrats.
Well-intentioned.
Social Network, the movie.
Spectacular.
Okay. Oracle.
Can I use two words?
Yeah.
Greatest capitalist.
Okay. Obama.
Unfortunate.
Maybe I'll skip the rest of these. How
Oh, get in your Prius.
about today's media?
Today's medium?
Media,
Media.
the press.
Supportive of the victim.
Supportive of the victim. Who's the victim?
Anybody, because they have been very aggressively unwilling to, nobody wants to pick up a newspaper and read, you dumb moron, you should have studied harder, gone to college, worked harder, and kept your job. They want to read, oh, the big bad corporation or somebody else messed with you and you are the victim. And that will drive, I mean, they're for profit. And people don't want to read how they screwed up. They want to read how they're a victim. And that's why you see such a non-personal responsibility lean on the media, and it's for their own survival. It's just people have to be smart enough to read through that. I had a really interesting meeting with David Gregory. He was a keynote speaker at a CEO event, and he was going on and on about his reporting of Washington and all the rest. And I raised a hand and I said, as CEO, I've got to disclose all my financial holdings and board memberships, and I got to show all that transparency of all my transactions. I said, why don't announcers and media people have right on the screen or on the internet how they voted, how they're registered, and where they've donated money to political parties, so that when I'm watching the news, I know where you're coming from. He spent the next 10 minutes trying to convince me that he had no bias. I said, you can't be a human with a brain that does something other than flatline without having a bias. And it's okay to have a bias. I just want to know what it is. He goes, I've been trained not to have a bias. By this time, his collar was just sweating. And his boss said, all right, next question. And I couldn't carry on. But the media just, it's an important question. People need, and what I challenge my kids is to understand that there's probably 60% accuracy in every article you read. The problem is they don't highlight the accurate parts. And you have to read everything with a real hairy eyeball and a massive dose of cynicism and a major dose of logic, or you're going to get confused.
Yeah. I know a question we all get asked. What do you think your legacy will be, or does it matter?
It's my 4 boys.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very excited about that. And those are my 4 best startups ever. And I'm very proud of them.
Well, that's a great answer. Scott, I enjoyed tonight. Working for Sun for 15 years, and my partner, I've done a lot of other things. It was a blast. It was probably the highlight of my career. I thank you for that. And that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talking to you.
Okay.
We'll just, let Let me open it up for questions from the group. There's microphones circulating somewhere, so if you've got a question, raise your hand, and we'll take a couple minutes of questions. Anybody? Yeah, we got a few right here. Just if you can stand up, maybe and just tell you who you are.
David Frank from Private Equity. If you were president, Scott, how would you do things different? Because you have great ideas, you know, and you're coming from a good spot for entrepreneurialism. You know, with China, the relationship with China, you know, how we're going in government and stuff like that. So if you had the job and say, look, I can do what I want.
You know, if I was Lee Kuan Yew, you mean? Or if I was President of the United States? You know, if I was in Singapore, it would be easy. Trying to deal with the checks and balances that we have and the multiple constituencies, I couldn't do the job. If I was President of the United States, I'd resign immediately. As you can tell, I do not have the diplomacy, the filter. I don't have the gentle touch of a Ronald Reagan. I admit all of that. I don't have that. I'm probably a better CEO than President of the United States. And so the first thing I do is resign. I certainly have a lot of advice for any potential CEO candidate, but I think they ought to come from the private sector. I think career politicians are a major problem. I think people who don't understand where jobs, taxes, goods and services come from is amazing, and I think the current administration has a less than single-digit percentage of folks who are from the private sector running this country, and that's a problem. I would staff it with people who have been there and done that, and I don't think big corporations are the problem we have. I think the pendulum in the last 15, 20 years has swung massively in the direction of big government, and I don't think that's helping.
Next question. Someone? Where are you? Who's got the mic? Oh, there you are, over there.
Pradeep Madgal. Question on China and India. Your thoughts, your views, where it's going?
Social networking and internet sites. I mean, people don't know that Tencent, I think, is the third most valuable internet site company on the planet today. And, you know, we think it's all Google and Facebook. The stuff that's going on over there would blow your mind. And they are clearly, there's far more English-speaking people in China than there are in the United States. So yeah, it's something you have to go visit. The places that I miss visiting, I miss going to India because I'm a rock star over there. I don't know why, but they just really appreciate capitalism and entrepreneurial. It's fun to go there. I've never, I mean, my ego gets a massive boost when I go over there, and it's going to be a very, very powerful force in the technology industry over the next 20, 30 years. Just sheer demographics and the focus that they have on science and technology, that is embedded in that culture, and I think that's very powerful. China is obviously the major force to be reckoned with, it was interesting. It was far easier for me to go see the Ministry of Education in China than it is to see the Secretary of Education in the United States, and far more effective to go see the ministry there.
Yeah. My 2 cents, by the way, I haven't visited them, especially when I was at Motorola, is I still think we control the world's innovation and thought leadership. But unless we listen to what Scott's been talking about, and certainly I've been talking about, and that is our competitiveness and keeping that fuel pumped in terms of getting everybody in this room, for example, to do what we've done for the last 30 years, we're going to be in trouble. But I still am very optimistic about the U.S. leading the way. It's just a matter of, this is a very scary time right now, what we're seeing over there. But
I'm telling my children to learn Mandarin.
Yeah. Next question. Jean?
Yes, thanks. Jean Boswell with IDC.
How you doing? It's been a while, huh?
Oh, you're still asking me questions.
Still asking. What's your workstation market share?
No. But I'm very glad to hear that you've been talking about globalization, because one of the things that you learn in looking at data is that the U.S. and North America and Western Europe are where all the riches of infrastructure and investment has been, and very little in some places like Central Europe and Latin America and Africa. You got to think that there's massive opportunity there. You kind of alluded to it. how do you see that playing out, and how would that affect us here in Silicon Valley to try to, work with that? Is it a cloud play? Is it an infrastructure play? How do we get involved with all the
For me, it was the mobile play,
No.
because they don't have the money to put telephone poles in.
Right,
And
right,
for
the last
me,
mile problem.
when I was doing Motorola, it was incredible understanding of how to put the mobile internet in place in places in Latin America, Middle East, and Eastern Europe and China. So I think it's a huge play, and for any of the companies here, and we learned this at Sun, I think, and Scott was good about this, is always global. I mean, we were always out there, even with a small company. And the U.S. is a great market, great profits, but you better be looking outside the U.S. for your technology.
Yeah, 2/3 of our business was outside the U.S., and you just had to get on the airplane and go see them.
Right. I remember the trip around Africa. I think
Yeah.
the stock went up all the time that you were away. No, it's just a sorry.
I'm feeling the love.
No, but seriously, I just wanted to hear your thoughts about the upside in the infrastructure around the world.
That is the big opportunity. And it's hard to figure out how to do it. China is probably the most interesting. Just ask Google and Yahoo and others who are trying to penetrate those markets. And you have to be creative. You have to figure out a way to get in and get that done. Other countries, you have the balkanization and different languages and different cultures, and it requires a lot of jail time, I call it. That's sitting in an airplane. I consider airplanes jail.
I think the other thing, Gene, you have to do is put your resources. I mean, problem with the U.S., we think it's outsourcing and all the other garbage that's being written about. And I was very, very vocal on that. I mean, you have to, these days the countries are smarter. And to understand what you have to do in China, for example, is you have to be there with some of your R&D and some of your people. So it's not about outsourcing, it's about deploying your resources globally to understand these different environments. And American corporations, no such thing as American corporation, it's a global corporation. And I think Washington's beginning to understand a little bit of that, not enough. And some of the rhetoric's died down about outsourcing jobs. Over here, question somebody had on this side of the room? I'll come back to, okay, right there, I don't know, just somebody take a mic.
Yeah, there are several of us here who are MBA students who are going to be graduating into this job market. How would you recommend differentiating ourselves and making us stand out from the crowd when we do eventually start applying?
I hope you're not a financial major. I don't know. I'll have to give it to the Stanford MBA.
If I were hiring an MBA, I'd want somebody with a technical degree, who worked a couple years, who played sports, was physically strong, and had stamina because they could work hard. I'd probably want them to be childless. So can you put them up for adoption? I mean, you can't do it in an interview. You can only do it based on your resume of what you've gotten done. And I would look for leadership qualities, captain of a team or leader of a band or, some other business activity. If you come from Stanford, I could probably hire you anyhow, because Stanford only brings people in who are proven leaders. And then they take credit for everything that happens after. So you've already passed that mental. All I know is you're very well rested after 2 years at business school.
Well, that was good advice. I'll add, if you don't go to Stanford, like some of us, I think today, go out and get some real experience. And even if you have to go into a bigger company and learn what it is to work and learn management and it's we got too spoiled by, we're going to get out of business school and all of a sudden we're going to be rich, 2 years from now. So I'd say go back to what I did, and I think what a lot of us did back in those days is to learn. Maybe you take 3 years and you go work in a company, and then I think your experience is that much.
I tell you, when I got out of business school, I'd been a foreman before business school, and I learned that I could find out more about how a company ran by being actually on the shop floor, right down at the if an MBA came to me and said, I don't want a management job, if it's a sales company, I want a sales job. If it's an engineering company, I want an engineering job. If it's a manufacturing company, I want to be on the floor. If somebody came to me with that kind of an attitude, you won me over. I'll pay you whatever you want. It's the one who comes in and says, I think I ought to be a director of whatever, or VP of whatever. Come in and learn the business. I will move you around and up through the organization faster than you can believe if you're willing to go in and understand, because the higher up you get, the less they tell you. And if you don't start down there and know and have buddies and have snitches that will share with you what's going on. And the beauty that I had with Sun and being a founder is that Kim Miller would come and tell me. She was the one who did it. All right. Yeah. No, seriously, everybody would just share with you what's going on. It's not snitching. It was just you had eyes and ears, because you all know how you act. People would come to Karen Hallstein's, my secretary here. They would come to her and say, is he in a good mood today? Oh, I'll come back tomorrow. Yeah. And you are so gamed by the time you get higher up in the organization. I want people who have been at the bottom and worked their way up.
Another question? Someone?
Hi, my name is Sandhya Gorman, and I'm with Intel Corporation. So one question, I have two questions. One is related to, just one?
Get a good one.
When the Oracle acquisition was announced, a lot of companies, a lot of end customers really lost confidence in the future roadmap and, where's all this going? A lot of resellers were pissed off. So it really gave us an opportunity to swoop in and say, hey, our technology's better and can do that. How did you feel about that? Did that break your heart, or was it just business? Or?
We had a pretty good breakup fee in there, so I was okay with that. That's not unique to any company that's an industrial company with a short engineering. I mean, we're dealing with Moore's Law, right? And we had to turn over our product line every 18 months or we were dead anyhow. So, Larry knew the risks of that. We knew the risks of that. But, we were a public company. We could not say no to an offer that the shareholders would vote for. And, people think it was my decision to sell the company. It wasn't. Once we went public in 1986, the company was for sale. Every day we had a for sale sign on, and it was in the Wall Street Journal under SUNW. Later JAVA or whatever it was. And so every public company is for sale every day. And some or all of it is for sale. And people act like the CEO decides, or the chairman decides, or even the board decides. The board doesn't. It's the shareholders who decide, and that's what makes our system work. So the shareholders took that chance and said it was worth doing.
Okay, a couple more over there.
Chen-Si Wang, I'm an analyst with Forrester Research. So I qualify as press in some circles, but we do have to disclose our investments. Also, I'm from China, so I know what Tencent is, and I've got a QQ ID. So here's my question. If a business school was to write a case study on Sun's rise and fall, maybe somebody has done it, I don't know, I haven't read one. If a business school was to do that, what would be the top 2 lessons they would write in the case study to people who are going to run businesses in the future?
Well, I'm not sure we fell. Getting acquired for $7.4 billion or something was something in 29 years ago to this day. If you'd have told me, would you take that? Yeah, I'd have probably taken it. You can call it a fall, but I would say, I don't know what the lessons are. It's 29 years of hard work.
It's kind of what day and point. I can go through that same thing,
It's hard work. We all worked. I mean, work was fun. Fun was work. We made it, we had things like the dress code was you must.
Yeah.
Well, and Eddie always figured that it was a little more than that. I think Mona dressed him. But I think the big lesson of Sun is you can work hard, have fun, make a difference, innovate like crazy, and still share. And I think that kind of describes Sun a lot in terms of what we did.
Another question? I thought Larry had it.
Yeah.
Where's Larry out
Hey,
there? Larry Hamble.
Sun employee, okay? Hi, guys.
Lou Tucker, ladies and gentlemen.
Lou, man,
I love working for you guys.
How you
and so
doing?
I wanted to reminisce a bit more.
No.
So, okay, the Java Station launch in New York, where we actually, with this little footnote, Java was being launched at the time. So I want to know, how did you sort of see that happening in terms of like, okay, here was a Java Station which actually wasn't going to come alive for now, where people are looking at, VDI and things like that. But how did you make the decision that Java was actually going to become something and start to put the resources
All
behind
right,
it?
I'll interrupt. I will give Eddie total credit for...
What do you mean? Eddie kept telling me, Lou, you're doing this Java shit. What are you doing? Get something real. Come on. You did.
Are you two done? Are you two done?
No, the reason I told you that is because he took it away from me, and I went Sun Subs. I wanted Java. Anyway, but actually, it was done at Moscone Center. And the truth about Java was, and let me give Scott some credit, the company tried to kill it a number of times. This is a funny thing about innovation.
At least 10 times.
And having passion and courage and stay the course.
But we escaped to
Hey, I'm talking,
Palo Alto
not you.
University.
Sit down, Lou. But
Some things never change.
The story goes, it was passed around inside the company for many years, trying to find a place on an application, and it would always come up as an expense, and no matter who was in the room, somebody would say, let's kill it. And we went to Moscone, and it was like third or fourth in the press releases. We announced the network switch. What? Yeah, Metropolis. And I remember it was like third billing or fourth billing, this language called Java, and then it hit it. And
yeah, but what you did is you made the press conference or the announcement. You dominated with Java, and the Java Station was a little footnote of that, and it was brilliant. And the big win there was we were able to hook the Java runtime onto the free open source Netscape browser. And it was a collision of two things that just accelerated and launched each other together. So it was fascinatingly lucky timing for both companies.
It was. Congratulations, Lou. It was. Another one, and another one or two was back there somewhere. Hi.
Hi, Ed. Hi, Scott. Amy Pearl, former Sun employee. And follow on Lou's question, to some extent, I'm curious what you see in terms of innovation. It seems like in Silicon Valley, I'm just constantly struck by this, the highlighting of infrastructure innovation and toward content. And I wonder about its enabling technology. What are the opportunities that versus creating actual things?
Yeah, that's what's going on, is we have user-generated content websites. And, eBay was probably the first, really big one. But email was the other user-generated content environment. And that's very leveraged. A few engineers create email, which generates an enormous amount of activity and a lot of wonderful workflow improvement. I mean, email is the #1 workflow product on the planet. So Facebook is just another way of automating and simplifying. There's a bunch of tools for basically managing messaging, for sending pictures around, and for sending tweets are just another way to do shout downs of large numbers of small emails. Lady Gaga has 7.5 million people following her on Twitter. You got to be kidding me. Speaking of unfortunate, that might top Obama. Yeah. So it's interesting that the innovation we're seeing in a lot of the Silicon Valley is not necessarily moving the ball forward. I still think the people who are miniaturizing things, who are keeping us on Moore's Law, are really driving the innovation that's making all of this possible.
I think it's a great question, because I'm doing, like Scott, a little investing and advising and consulting. And I'll tell you, it's hard to get money if you've got product, if you want to build something. And if you don't tell somebody you're going to have 50 million users in 6 months or a year, and you're going to get a market cap of Y or X, I mean, it's hard getting money. And I see some really interesting ideas that are old-fashioned products or things along those lines. You know, I know Zach's over here, software as a service and analytics and some of those other things are pretty interesting. And there's a lot of, the good news is there's a lot of bright people, young people that are thinking, and we just got to get them. That's why I asked about venture capital, and some of the VC firms, the bigger ones, are kind of risk averse these days. They want bigger things, bigger plays. And I think, thank goodness, there are people like Scott, myself a little bit, and a lot of other people around that are trying to find some of these bright people that have those kind of old-fashioned ideas about product and fund them and see whether we can create the next Sun or the next
I wish it was
Apple.
easier to do here, but with minimum wages, cost of housing, cost of permits, regulations, the cost of capital, the cost of firing, it makes this a very, very tough place to go do labor-intensive R&D and manufacturing, and it's just not going to happen here.
Okay, we got the last one. Is Hambly still here? Because he promised he wanted to ask a question. I don't know where he is, Larry. You know, what's a Q&A without Larry? He's over there. Can we get Larry or are we over here? I want to get Larry too, so we're going to get Larry. Get a mic over to Larry. Larry, make it nice.
Okay, I'm here.
He's over here. He's over here. There he is.
No,
This is
I'm
Larry.
Oh, I have to be nice. Oh, well.
Yeah.
That will be different.
Well, what